Welcome to the Department of English, P.N. Das College, West Bengal. The course that we are offering to you is entitled European Classical Literature, and I heartily welcome you to this series of lectures that would take you through a brief introduction of the background, including a study of literary and social history of the Athenian city-state and Augustan Rome. The course would take you further to a detailed study of Homer's Iliad, Sophocles' Oedipus the King, and selections from Ovid's Metamorphoses, and of course, Plautus's Pot of Gold. This is the first of the modules that are being shared by me and my colleagues at the Department of English. I am Suman Bandyopadhyay, Assistant Professor in the Department of English, P.N. Das College. And I must say, this lecture will be introductory in nature and will focus on the features of epic poetry with particular references to Homer's Iliad. Here are a few examples of the great epics of the world. The one on the left is the Aeneid by the Latin poet Virgil. The next two are the Mahabharata and the Ramayana from ancient India. And the one on the extreme right is the Old English Beowulf. One can of course include several others in this list, as for example Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, Ariosto's Orlando Furioso, Dante's Divine Comedy, and of course Milton's Paradise Lost. The earliest surviving epic, however, is the Epic of Gilgamesh from ancient Mesopotamia, which dates back to the 21st century BC. Epic poems are known as part of an oral tradition, which means that they were initially spoken and orally transmitted. They were not originally written. The works that we see today are the results of several generations of retelling and recording. The earliest epics that were orally transmitted are called primary epics, while the ones written are called secondary epics. Now, to introduce the term, epics are actually long narrative poems describing the adventures of great heroes who embody the ethos and values of their civilization or society. Epics narrate fictionalized historical events that include great feats, particularly long journeys, slaying of monsters, wars, and even founding of nations. Coming to the epic conventions, the story starts in medias res, that is to say, in the middle of things. The Iliad, for example, begins in the 9th year of the Trojan War, with the argument between Agamemnon and Achilles, and thereafter it moves back and forth in time. Epics usually begin with the invocation to the muse, which are actually inspirational goddesses of literature, science, and also the arts. The invocation also articulates the theme or the argument of the poem. For instance, the beginning of the Iliad reads, "Anger, sing, goddess, the anger of Achilles, son of Peleus, that accursed anger which brought the Greeks endless sufferings, and sent the mighty souls of many warriors to Hades, leaving their bodies as carrion for the dogs and a feast for the birds." The beginning of the poem thus tells us the theme and invokes the muse with the phrase, "Sing, goddess." The chief protagonist of the epic is a valiant hero of great importance, and he represents the heroic ethos and culture of his age. Achilles, for example, is described as godlike, and he embodies the very idea of heroic honor. The setting is ample in scale, which means it's widespread and generic. In the Iliad, it's Bronze Age Troy and its environs, but it moves at times even to Mount Olympus. The story is also set on the shores of Troy, but the shores of Troy could well represent any shore of any invading force. The plot involves superhuman deeds and deeds of great valor. Achilles and Hector are represented as warriors possessing superhuman prowess and strength. They perform feats well beyond the ability of an average man. And the gods take a keen interest in the human affairs and often intervene directly in the human action. For example, Apollo curses the Greeks on the request of Chryses because Agamemnon doesn't return his daughter to him. Athena also intervenes and advises Achilles to control his anger. She even pulls Achilles' hair to draw his attention. Now, coming to the stylistic devices, the poet uses a grand style of sustained elevation and ceremonious language. Exotic proper nouns, long complex sentences, and circumlocution or roundabout ways of expression, these are a regular feature of the epic style. Epics also adhere strictly to the heroic meter, that is, the dactylic hexameter or the iambic pentameter. Then again, there are extensive and recurrent use of stock epithets like Phoebus Apollo or godlike Achilles, which are used to define the characters. The epic simile, often called the Homeric or extended simile, is an elaborate simile that continues for a number of lines and compares the epic events to contemporary everyday things. This helps the audience understand incidents of a distant world and time. For example, there is a lengthy comparison between Agamemnon's army and bees. In Paradise Lost, we have quite a number of such comparisons, as for example, Satan's shield is compared to the moon when it was first seen through the telescope by Galileo. Epic digressions are passages that do not take the action forward, but rather interrupt the narration with allusion to things past or incidents outside the story. These were necessary to remind the reader or the audience about previous events. For example, in the first book of the Iliad, Nestor drifts for 14 lines to describe how he had in the distant past fought with the centaurs. Epic also have formal introductions of characters, objects, and places, and these are called epic catalogues. In the Iliad Book 2, we have the catalogues of ships, contingents of Achaean army, with the names of leaders of each contingent. Now, before we part, let's have a brief overview of a few traits of an epic hero, for this is central to the very conception of the epic. The epic hero is a larger-than-life person who embodies the important morals, values, and virtues of his culture and society. It must, however, be kept in mind that the focus of the heroic morality was more on performed courage than on internalized virtues. The epic hero usually undertakes a quest or a journey to achieve something of great value to himself or maybe to his society. He often responds to a call to adventure and embarks on a voyage from the known to the unknown, goes through tough trials only to return once again to the known world, but of course after revelation and as a man transformed. The epic hero is especially skilled with and without weapons. The ordinary laws of nature are often suspended for the epic hero as he performs superhuman deeds. The hero is clever and wise, but at times he also is capable of error. With this, we come to the close of this lecture. Thank you and hope to meet you soon.